Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Non to Comic Book. This being a show I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, the latest episode of Van Helsing, as well as the latest episode of Arrow. Like always, if I'm telling something you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Gotham, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Van Helsing and or skip to this week's episode of Arrow. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Gotham. A very good episode. We got introduced to a new antagonist, labeled Professor Pig, which is kind of interesting because at first I was like, has Gotham had serial killers before? Which they have, but this is a very interesting serial killer. First of all, the fact of the matter is I was thinking like, oh, it's a pig mask. It's like, no, he literally cut the head off of pigs and uses them as a mask. That's kind of interesting too because we still don't know who he is exactly. I did like the kind of twist they made to the story, but like, oh, maybe he's possibly a cop, with the fact is he knows the information that he knows. But the way he hints at it, it does seem like that's not the case. But I'm curious, how does he know the information he knows? Like knowing exactly what cops are connected to Penguin, because this is all about him killing dirty cops. It's actually kind of interesting when you break it down because he's actually like a reflection of Gordon to a certain extent, because Gordon's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to bring the whole system down. Obviously, Professor Pig's going about it a very different way. He's like ready to get all bloody if he needs to. I thought that situation with the final cop was so interesting, like, oh, pulling off the mask, and it's like, oh, he had cut and put, like, a grenade in the dude's stomach, and the moment, like, Gordon had lifted up the mask, and had pulled the pin, and that grenade exploded. I was like, wow, that was pretty brutal, so... But, like I said, because the way he makes it sounds like he was personally affected by this whole situation, whether it's crime in Gotham in general, kind of like he's like, oh, basically being, like, affected by, like, the top dogs, because in this situation, I guess it's a combination of just, it's like these cops are meant to protect the city, but instead they're actually protecting Penguin. They're actually getting, fat from him, essentially. He's paying the money and everything, and it's like, for him, he's like, oh, I suffer profound loss. So it's almost, to a certain extent, he's kind of very similar to the Executioner, who Barnes became, but it seems like it's more like, it doesn't seem like he's going after every bad person in Gotham specifically, and I guess it kind of fits his whole, maybe that's why he chose the persona of a pig, because of who he's attacking, cops, pigs, there's the kind of the whole point to it. It's kind of interesting, Penguin's approach to this whole situation. Like, we never really saw him got too, like, connected to it, because Jim went to him early in the episode, and he's like, oh, I'm always helping, I'm rooting for you, Jim, but if you need to, you can always just come to me for help, which, has to hurt Gordon a little bit, because, like, they were able to find out who his targets were, or at least, like, a similar direction to look, because of the whole licensing program and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, these are people that are on Penguin's payroll, and eventually, I'm curious to see, since they're such, like, so low on a totem pole, does he really care? Because it's not affecting his personal business. Because at the end of the day, these are cops who are meant to, look away when it comes to certain things. So, I don't know. They're called the money men, but, because they're paid specifically to kind of look the other way and everything, which they're supposed to do anyway, but still they're kind of getting a little extra to be like, definitely look away. So I guess for him, it's a win-win situation, because if he takes out the bad guys, it's less people Penguin has to pay. So now I'm sitting here thinking, it doesn't seem like he'd really care all that much, but we'll kind of have to see, because it still might interfere with his business, because the way he talks to Gordon, it's like, yeah, he's going after everyone that's bad, and Gordon's like, that could easily be like half the GCPD, and it's like, well, I like the kind of the antidote he used. Well, not antidote. The metaphor he kind of used. It's kind of like comparing it to like people. No one wants to know how the sausage is made, but at the moment it's made, it's delicious. So that was kind of cool. Like I said, it's just, I don't know, like, maybe it's been a while since we had, like, a very serial killer, because I feel like a lot of the enemies, they've, like, been a part of Gotham for a while. Maybe I'm letting my mind slip, but, it's like, I feel like this is the first, like, to be fair, I'm sure, like, the fact is he has a name like Professor Pig, because I saw some stuff on popping up about him, about how he's going to pop up in Gotham, so I'm assuming he is some kind of, like notorious Batman villain, because I was about to say, like, oh yeah, because most villains lately have been more so on the Batman side of things. We haven't had like Joe Schmo. In retrospect, because I'm not that familiar with Batman, there's probably been a lot of bad guys in the past. It's like, yeah, you don't know, it's just like a run-of-the-mill person. It's like, no, that person has like a place in the Batman canon. That's not just like a Gotham specific character. That's like, no, that's like a big time villain that you just didn't realize that I didn't realize at the time. Well, not big time, but maybe like a lower tier Batman villain, Z-lister or something. That whole Harvey situation did kind of make me think, because immediately when Harvey was just kind of like, I thought that's what Harvey was stressing out about and everything earlier. I was like, no. He's actually he's the fourth bag man. He's the money man. I mean, it turns out there was someone else, but then it turns out, oh, I was right. And because even Gordon feels bad about it, because he's like, I didn't see it coming, which, for Harvey, it's like, no. The fact of the matter is, I'm only doing this because, I was told to do it anyway. It's like orders from higher up. Plus, I need to pay off a lot of debts and bills. So trying to justify it because, in all honesty, he feels ashamed because after everything him and Gordon have been through, he feels like, he's betraying and letting Gordon down because he's making it seem like, oh, everything he's done so far has been like, I'm trying to keep the peace and everything, when in actuality, you're just trying to fill your pocket, which it's harder to say. Like, obviously, I've talked about it more recently when I did like a nerd mode before the season began about Gotham. It's like, Harvey's kind of in that gray area, but over the past couple of seasons, he's been leaning more towards like, no, he, sides with Gordon a lot. Just like I brought it up at the beginning of this season. This is like the first season that him and Gordon have really split difference on how things should be handled. It's kind of going back to season 1, but in a different manner. It's actually, I didn't even think about that. This is actually Harvey transitioning back into more who he was in season 1, when it was like he was cool with Fish, and it's just like, yo, you do things like this to keep order in Gotham. So it's like, it's a very similar thing. And then like, Harvey hasn't been like this for a while, so. But it's just, it's got to suck for Gordon because at the very least, Harvey, that's his partner, arguably probably like his best friend. And it's like, he feels like he's being betrayed by the one person in the, in Gotham he feels like he can trust most. So I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting development. So the professor wasn't caught this episode, so we're definitely going to be seeing him in the near future more. So I am curious to see what else he has planned. And then another side of this episode dealt with the whole Sophia and Penguin situation. It's kind of interesting, like how that was all designed and everything, like Penguin having dinner with her and everything. Like, I think I brought it up before, but they're really setting Sophia up to definitely be like a more femme fatale type of situation, because it's kind of interesting. There was a line of dialogue where she was basically like, oh, don't worry, Jim, soon enough I'll have Penguin right where I want him, which obviously the way episode plays out, that's a given. But obviously, like, before I get into that, I do want to bring up the moment she said that, I couldn't help but think to myself, it's like, who's to say Penguin's the only one she's got, under her hands, like, because obviously she, to a certain degree, she's using Gordon too. Like, she's like, oh, like, obviously she's trying to gain power and become, kind of run things now. So, I mean, that's the art. Like, I mean, you don't know what her end result is. Like, because the fact of the matter is, Penguin is the devil you know. You don't know Sophia. You know Carmine, but you don't know Sophia. You don't know what kind of person she could be. She tries to be like, oh, my dad is so respectable how he handled things. Who's to say Sophia was going to handle things like that? She might be more of a, like, she might, making a deal with the devil, like, in this particular situation. Jim is thinking, like, maybe he's making the best of this situation, but maybe he's making things worse for Gotham. You don't know. We still don't know what it is Sophia has exactly planned. It seemed like the episode is about like her luring him into a false sense of security. Obviously, the moment she bought that building, she was doing all that shady stuff behind Penguin's back. And he's like, oh, she's arming up a fortress and everything. And it turns out that she's actually building an orphanage. And she's like, don't worry, Oswald, I forgive you. Oh, I already forgave you. And just like being all charming and sweet. And she's like, you know what you can do for me? Lunch. Because for Oswald too, because this is like a new opportunity for him. Because even Victor constantly, like, oh yeah, you think she's kind of stepping out, and he's like, what are you talking about? This isn't a date. Yeah, she, constantly referencing it as a date, and Oswald has to be like, no, it's not a date. Which in actuality, that seems like that might be the case. Kind of leads, like, it might be part of that femme fatale, like, leading more to the whole femme fatale situation that I'm just referenced before. But, because it's all about, gaining his trust. And now, because also Oswald wants people in his life. He wants someone like, he's always striving to fill that hole in his heart. When his mom died, with Ed. Now he's trying to fill that spot because he doesn't really have a lot of people. There's people who work for him, but he doesn't have many people that he can rely on and trust. Because once again, he told himself he wasn't going to do it. And that was, when he made a mistake with Ed of falling in love, letting his heart control him. Now he's letting it happen all over again with Sophia. But maybe in his head, he thinks it's going to be a little different because as long as it doesn't turn into a relationship thing, which he's saying it's not, but who's to say it won't eventually be like that. Maybe it is, asking her, like, getting all fancy lunch and stuff like that, and just kind of being excited about having dinner with her and everything. So maybe there's more into that. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see how Sophia plays this all out. Like I said, she's definitely got Oswald under her thumb because it's like, oh, now he thought she betrayed her. And it's like, oh, now she's put him in a position where he's like, I'm being so paranoid. Everything she's done, she's been helpful to me. She's helping grow everything. Because that's even something Jim was like, all you're doing is making Penguin more powerful. So what's the plan? Still not letting anyone else know. So I'm very interested to see what she's got up her sleeves. And then another side of this episode was about the whole Ed situation with Grundy. We did kind of see a little bit more with Grundy too. It does seem like he does rapidly heal. Like, I've never dived too deeply into Solomon Grundy, but, it does seem like he has some kind of healing regeneration factor too. Because, it seems like he also doesn't bleed blood. It seems like he bleeds swamp water, apparently. But, because he had a burned hand from last week's episode, and it looks like it's already healed up too. Not just the fact is that he's got, like, his handbag, which Lee points out. I do love Lee's position in this episode too, constantly berating, like, oh, you're trying to blackmail me? Oh, what are you going to do, Ed? And he can't do anything. And she just laughs in his face. It's got to suck so bad because Ed found out, like, oh, I got this. Oh, there's this weakness you have. I can exploit it, but he can't do it. Even to the point he's having trouble remembering words. It's kind of like breaking the wall. Like, it's that weird thing I do sometimes when I reference stuff outside of DC. In a sense, I'm going to reference something Marvel related. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in season 2 because of what went down in season 1. Obviously, if you never watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I won't spoil it for you. But basically, there was a situation where Fitz was kind of in a similar situation to Ed and kind of had to deal with that. That was kind of a situation that just kind of like, it miraculously fixed itself. I am curious to find out what they do about the whole Ed situation, because the reason why he's going to Lee is because she's a medical professional, and the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, I guess because in his mind, it's like Lee knew him, she knew who the man he was, so it's like she has a basis of being like, okay, this is where you are right now, and this is where you were before. I need to get you back to that point. So that's his, his rationale for it, I assume. Well, it seems so, but we kind of get to see like Lee like understand why she's doing what she's doing, because I was asking, because she's running a little clinic and everything. I was like, okay, that makes sense, she's doing something good, but at the same time I was like, that still doesn't change the fact is, why are you back in Gotham? And it seems like she explains why. It's actually connected to the Tetch virus last season, what she did releasing it and everything. It's like, I was under the virus's control and everything, sure, but I still released it and everything, and she feels responsible. The particular area she opened her clinic are people who are affected most by, maybe not necessarily people who were infected with the virus, but like small areas that were hit the hardest, by, the virus going crazy. Maybe these people got hurt, or maybe these are after, probably like a lot of like, maybe like that area was kind of like people, businesses and stuff left it behind, so they can't get the medical treatment they need. Maybe because people backed out of it, because it's like, oh, no one's wanting to go back there because the place was run down and destroyed during the whole, like, everyone getting infected with the Tetch virus. So she feels responsible because she released it and everything. So that's kind of interesting, because I was wondering why would she come back, because it did seem like she didn't want to come back. But then again, maybe ultimately, maybe it's kind of like Sophia said, like Gotham's kind of in her blood. Maybe the same thing for Lee, that Gotham's in her blood and it's kind of it's causing her, and no matter how far she wants to get away, there's always going to be something that draws her back. Obviously she hasn't told Jim that she's back. Her whole situation at the fight clubs is like her way of like, I guess the lady that runs the club, like the fight arena, is like, yeah, you can keep doing what you want to, just make sure you're the doc for my fighters and stuff like that. Which you had Grundy cleaning house this episode, even to the point taking blows and everything, and then like Ed had to be like, you can fight back. Grundy's like, fight back now? Is like, and he's like, yeah. Which you saw kind of like how I feel like is it me, like it feels like this season's a little bloody, or at least gruesomer. I mean, Gotham's already been a little bloody and gruesome a little bit, but I don't know. I guess just how brutal like Grundy was taking care of people, but it's not like that is 100% new to Gotham. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. I'm so interested to see what they do with the whole Ed and Grundy storyline, because even Lee tried to warn him. It's like, Ed's not your best friend. He's just using you. But, you know, in Solomon's head, it's like, no. He's Grundy's best friend, you know? So, and also there's a whole aspect of the fact of the matter is there are people cheering for him. So I'm sure for Grundy that feels good too. Like I said, I'm so curious to see those storylines overlap, you know, Barbara as well as Tabitha meeting up with him. I doubt that's going to be anytime soon just because he's spending so much time fighting, getting money, so now that he can give that money to Lee so she can pay for medicine. So now she's kind of getting mixed up in all this. It's going to help Ed out with the whole situation. She even had to point out to him, like, yeah, this is how you should have actually blackmailed me, but you're kind of stupid at this point in time. So, but I mean, overall, just a great episode. Like I said, I'm so interested to learn more about this Professor Pig villain. I'm so interested to see the whole where Sophia takes things, as well as things between Lee, Grundy, and like how that whole situation involved, like how she's going to go about helping him and examining him and stuff like that. I'm so curious to see what they have in store, especially what goes down in the next episode. I saw some hints of the next episode, but it doesn't seem like, from the little bit I saw, it doesn't seem like necessarily continuing, at least the Professor Pig stuff. That might be like later on, but from what I saw, we're definitely continuing stuff picking up with stuff with Bruce. So I'm interested about that. So very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. Also, really quickly, I wanted to talk about something too in this episode. It's kind of cool and sad a little bit. The whole like Harvey and Jim kind of doing that whole like situation of like, oh yeah, locking that cop in, kind of being like, oh, I guess we're just going to go for lunch. And just, I don't know, it's just kind of like nice seeing that dynamic between them. Obviously, it's a little sad considering where they stand at the end of the episode. I'm definitely curious to see where they stand going forward too. Like now that Jim knows the truth. I mean, he's telling, you know, Harvey like to cut out the whole taking bribes things, but I am curious to see like, I mean, they've come back from bad things before, you know, it's like, you know, I think given enough time, their relationship can replenish. It's interesting because they're kind of having issues, and then there's the whole like him kind of working with a criminal, that being Sophia, to kind of help bring a little more balance back to Gotham instead of things kind of being so criminally one-sided. I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I was just thinking of like the comparisons of like where his relationships stand like currently with everybody, you know. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. So that was just the last thing I wanted to, you know, talk about that subject. So moving on. And now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing. Another great episode. So a lot went down, so let's break everything down. Let's focus on, I mean, ultimately everything was connected in this episode, which I loved. I mean, for one, we had Vanessa kind of going wild, which we haven't seen Vanessa really wild this season. There are moments where she kind of lost control last season because kind of her blood kind of kicks in. But basically, it's her way of dealing with the whole Dylan situation. We don't know in retrospective how long it's been since Dylan died, like how much time has really passed. But she's just been lashing out at every vampire she can. And Julius is trying to pull her back from it. He ends up kind of using the example of like, oh yeah, you're ahead, because he ends up talking about his boxing days a little bit. That he's ahead, that you're ahead. Don't get, get so caught up in it you don't see that right hook coming. Which I guess kind of plays into the episode, how the episode ends. But I'll definitely kind of get into that later on. But for now, it's just like, it's so interesting to see that relationship. I don't think I commented on it last episode, but obviously when Dylan was around, she was like, they were having fun together and everything. And it's so interesting. Once mortal enemies, now allies. I mean, to be fair, I guess because she saw the good side of Julius, that he was helping her and everything. So, I don't know, you see that bond a little bit. Like, she ends up punching him. He's like, do you feel better? She's like, yeah, I actually do. And they're just laughing, especially when she finds out he's been around since like, she's like, oh yeah, when was your boxing days? Like 1936? Wow, that's crazy. It's just like, and she smiled hearing his story. It's just interesting to see them kind of bonding like that. But they end up coming across another group of vampires, and I love that. It isn't like we're just like the pharaohs and the feeders like we were in season 1. It's like, no, we're expanding upon. Well, Grant, actually, there was that other group that the ones who fanged sucking Vanessa, and she kind of got poisoned last season and wouldn't heal. It was actually killing her. Which is still interesting. The fact is that was killing her, because Vanessa seems like she can't die otherwise. I mean, I guess given enough damage, you chop off her head or something, she will eventually die, but she regenerates so quickly. But for that leg, that venom, to whatever those things are, like they must be like a mutation amongst the vampires for them to be able to hurt Vanessa. That was something that came up in season 1, but it hasn't like found its way back yet. So I'm curious about that. But we end up finding out about another group of vampires known as skinners, because they literally skin people and wear their skin, and which is like very disturbing. It's very like Leatherface like, and it just kind of makes your skin crawl, especially because you see them wearing the faces as masks on the front and back of their heads. It's pretty disgusting. And pretty brutally, they ended up slicing off a piece of Vanessa's back, and I'm like, ugh. I wonder, because like as we saw, like ferals are too far gone, because I was like, oh, she's killing those vampires, she's not healing them. But then it clicked in my head later, all right, those are like, even Julius said it himself, those were ferals. It's like ferals are too far gone to be healed. She can only heal people who haven't like going so long without blood that they've eventually kind of digressed. Like there's no coming back, because at that point all the human in you is gone. So I wonder, are the I'm gonna call them skinwalkers, are the skinners the same way? Are they too far gone to be healed? But in the woods they end up meeting a community. The Johnsons is a dude, Chad and Mike, who lead a group of kids, which there's a part of your brain that's kind of like, oh, that's a little okay. But the fact of the matter is that they train kids, because kids are kind of the perfect bait, because the vampires will come to them because it's like, oh, young blood and everything. But at the same time, it's also about, these are kids who are orphans who have no home. So it's all about preparing them to be able to defend themselves, because their future was stolen away, and it's almost like, oh, they can fight to reclaim the future that was kind of supposed to be theirs, essentially. So, which Vanessa, obviously, this whole situation hits her a little hard. It has not been, like I said, losing Dylan. So the fact of the matter is, the way the conversation is, it does seem like it has been a good amount of time. Like how much time, we still don't know. Like whether it's been a day or so, but it seems like it makes it seem like a good chunk of time has passed. But nevertheless, they meet up with this group, and it's like they built this little nice community, telling stories, kind of talking about the story of Beowulf. But then you have Vanessa about to say something else, but she's just kind of like, which I'm not that familiar with the story of Beowulf. I was supposed to read it in high school. I just kind of did, because I hate forced reading stuff. It's like one of those things. It's like, if I actually took the time out to read Beowulf, I guarantee you I'd probably really like it. But nevertheless, it's probably a situation like she knew it'd be extra depressing. So she was like, yeah, actually, that's not all, his situation's a little more complicated. It's just like, oh, Beowulf was prepared and cunning and courageous, so he ended up toppling the Grendel. But it's like, there's more to the story, at least Vanessa was going into, but she's like, it's too depressing. It's like you're trying to morale the troops, essentially, so she's kind of stopped herself. Which one of the guys is like, why are you kind of like all negative and everything? It's like, well, Vanessa, if you had met Vanessa sooner, maybe things would be different. I mean, at the same time, it kind of has like a Walking Dead type of vibe to it, where it's like, you can't really trust every community you come across. I mean, Brennan and his group were kind of douches, but in retrospect, it's like, well, under the circumstances, they were just trying to survive, and considering everything that was going down in the hospital, it's like, but still, like, from our perspective of the protagonist and everything, it's like, they were douchebags. But nevertheless, there's also, like, Eden from last season too, but that was, like, 2 people out of, like, well, not just, that was a few people, bad eggs amongst a good group who was, like, oblivious to what they were doing the entire time. But nevertheless, this is like our third community that's coming around. So I was like, part of me was like very suspicious, especially Vanessa was, what is the whole like Troy having wounds thing. So I'm like, oh my God, are they doing something weird where they're having the kids hand over pound like pieces of their own flesh to keep the skinners at bay? I was literally about to call them skinwalkers again. I can't just help but like, I'm so used to be like, oh, skinwalkers. And so just calling them skinners just kind of like throws me off guard. But that's what I was thinking that was about. But it turns out in actuality, it's actually connected to the group that Sam is currently with. I liked that little twist. I was like, oh, the fact of the matter is they showed up to the meeting late and everything. I was like, what is that? I was like, oh man, that's about to turn. It's like, oh, the fact is they didn't show up. I was like, is this the group? Is it the same group? It turns out it is. I didn't really get a look at his wounds, but now in retrospect, I'm like, it makes sense. That was most likely wounds from the lashes they gave people. Because if interesting enough, kind of flipping the other side of it to kind of balance it out, it's talking about the whole situation with Sam. Obviously, you can tell the kids that were locked up, the numbers have dwindled down a lot. The ones that were captured and locked off. But you had Sam end up lashing one of the kids, like kind of the leader of the group, kind of lashed him. But he was like, please stop. And then he just ultimately killed him. Because it's all about, he's still keeping that persona of like, oh my God, Felix is Muhammad. You're my Muhammad. Even going like, oh, let's play hide and seek and everything. It's like, oh yeah, making those like motions with his hands supposed to be like friendship, their bond. It's like, oh, we're friends. My Muhammad. To the point, he ends up shaving Felix's head later on in the episode. Even at one point cutting his tongue out just so that he wouldn't like talk anymore about like, I'm Felix. It's like, shut up. You're breaking the illusion of my Muhammad. It actually took me by surprise because I was wondering last episode, like, which side of things is it? Is it him partially kind of enjoying this because it's kind of getting back at the people who kind of tortured him a little bit? Or is this the side of him being like, no, I'm going to try and be it, like he's just trying to survive, which it seems like it's more so the latter because, when the opportunity came, he was trying to get away from Sam. He was like, oh crap, and trying to go back for the others. He got away long enough to free them, but then Sam caught him and everything, so that sucks. Earlier I mentioned the whole like Julius talking about not, getting caught off guard with that right hook. And I was like, oh, maybe that has something to do with the end of the episode. To me, that right hook seems like it might be Sam. Because for Vanessa, this is a way of kind of like, finishing something she should have started long ago. Which is also super messed up, too, because you have that gross aspect of like Sam putting all those fingers on a necklace around his neck and stuff like that. And because I noticed that at the beginning of the episode, too, I was like, oh, they all have missing fingers. Like, while it was like zooming down the hallway at the very beginning of the episode, I'm like, he still cannot help his signature. I don't think Julius has recognized it yet either, because he's like, oh, this person, but he probably didn't really look at the fingers and realize that that's definitely probably going to play an element next episode, because he doesn't realize that this is the same person who killed his mom, because in his head it's like, oh, he still thinks Dimitri did it. That's what he was trying to do. Like, while the Citadel was being attacked, he was trying to muster up his army to go after, he's going to go after him himself. It's like, I am curious about the rest of his people, What does that mean now that Julius is human now? So, but I'm very curious to see how this all goes down, because Vanessa's got skills being a Van Helsing and everything, but Sam has shown himself, even Muhammad brought it up last season. It's like Sam is dangerous as a human, but now that he's a vampire, he's even more dangerous. As you saw, like, even all those group of kids couldn't even stop him. Like, it seems like it's a delinquent school, what that is. It's like a juvenile delinquent center, essentially. So, which in retrospect, they're not well trained, It's kind of like what Julius has been bringing up before. Like, you shouldn't underestimate other vampires. Like, you've been going up against what? Pharaohs. Like, the only reason why you got the deadly blow on Dimitri like you did was because you caught him off guard. You were on human, well, not human blood. You were on, it was in fact human blood. Yeah. Because human blood does the same thing for kind of getting her hyped up. Vampire blood does that too, right? Because she gets more vicious when she kind of drinks. I can't remember, like, if that's how that works or not. Because any other time she's been drinking blood, it's always been human blood, right? But like I said, she also gets a little vicious when it comes to biting vampires too. Like, because she kind of goes in like her like hyper kind of rage mode. So, but nevertheless, that's just kind of interesting to me that, this is her without that in her system. So even as tough as she is, it's not going to be easy going up against Sam. So I am curious to see how that all plays out. And also whether it's 100% true about the whole situation with that boy Troy, and whether like that group, the Johnsons, is really on the up and up. So it's kind of interesting, because that ended all that. It's so interesting that that was the main focus of the episode, and it's like, now it makes sense why, because it was all coming full circle. So I am curious to see, will Vanessa actually kill him or not. Now, there's other things that kind of went down this episode. Look, we had a little look at the whole Axel and Doc thing. Not too much happened in that episode, that side of things. It does seem like the spikes and everything were meant to be like, oh, keep Axel at bay while he's like kind of being controlled by his urges. But at the camp, like, Vanessa was like, she was having a nightmare, but it wasn't like before. Like, let's not forget last episode, like, she awoke something that was kind of sleeping the entire time. So like I said, I don't know whether that was one of the elders or whether that was something else, but something woke up last episode because of her scream, which also is going to lead into my other point in this episode, that apparently that does seem like it does have like a rallying call type of thing, because like last episode, everyone felt it. Like, for example, Julius brought it up this episode. He's like, I know what you felt because I felt it. It's like, he's like, I felt that feelings of what you felt like in your entire body. So it's like, not only is it like a call to like draw people in, because Doc was like, yeah, I got this feeling like this is the direction we need to go to get to Vanessa. So it's like almost a beacon call, but it also lets them feel what she feels. And like I said, in a weird way, it's almost like Vanessa has an army of her own. So I don't know whether that's the same thing. Maybe that person that's buried underground is her dad, because remember, Dimitri talked about it last season. We still haven't touched on her family situation. It's like, oh yeah, the moment your mom found out what your dad was. So it's like being what she is. Once again, I don't know whether everything she does is because she is a Van Helsing, or is it because she's a Van Helsing mixed with a vampire? Is it like Van Helsings are naturally like a bloodline of people crossed between vampires and humans, or like it's like I said, is that between her dad and her mom's genes kind of colliding? Like, is that what that's supposed to represent? Like her badass skills and everything representing her as a Van Helsing, whereas her dad's situation represents the kind of bloodlust, like wild side of her, like she showed this episode when she was just like smashing up those pharaohs and everything. So I am curious to find out like what that's really all about. Because in my mind, kind of going back to it really quickly, I did kind of think it was actually going to be Muhammad and the Lucky and Flash Phil who end up coming across that delinquent center, but it turns out it'd be Vanessa kind of be. I think like obviously all stories are going to converge because obviously Phil got the call too, so he felt it last episode too. So obviously every direction is going to be everything's coming together. It's kind of cool in a way too because it's like the hospital group, at least those who survived, are kind of coming together now. But another thing that also went down this episode too is that the masked person that's like almost like a samurai slash ninja that saved Muhammad the other episode is closing in on Vanessa because that person found all those pharaohs that she killed and like her hair was in one of their hands. So many thoughts about who that could be. At first, I'm kind of like, because I thought, I brought it up before, I was like, could it be Theo? Because Theo's the only one we've ever really seen kind of wielding a sword and stuff like that. Then immediately my brain started thinking just now, I'm like, could it be her mom? Maybe her mom heard about all these different rumors about, oh, the woman that everyone's talking about that's so skilled and the one that, you know, the vampires are after and everything. So immediately my brain goes, is it her mom? Because other than her mom giving her up, which her mom's whole thing was about trying to hide her and protect her. So that begs the question of like, is that her now? And where has she been all the time? Because I mean, I can't think of anyone else that we've met so far in the show that would be that good. Like I said, Theo's the only one that's used a sword, but to go through the trouble of hiding your identity like that, I feel like it's got to be like a surprise, like it's her mom or something. So she seems like the most likely candidate, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front, you know? Also, like I brought up earlier, like this season does seem like it is introducing other vampires. Like, I mean, I don't think, like, I'm curious, like, I don't think there's that much of a difference between the vampires, like, between feeders, pharaohs, and skinners. I don't think there's that much of a big difference. Obviously, feeders are a lot more control and intellect. They do have some thought, whereas pharaohs are more kind of just wild, crazy, just like bloodlust. That's it. So and Skinners seem like they're kind of along that same range too. So I don't know if that changes anything about how powerful they are or anything. They might all be relatively the same amount of strength. It seems like it because I feel like they go down just like pharaohs would. So they're probably borderlining pharaohs, but maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. So I'm curious to see what other vampires we get aware of. Like I said, like there's still the whole elders angle that Dimitri brought up last episode. Whether that vampire that woke up was one or not. Maybe it ends up turning out that Vanessa's dad is one, if that ends up being her dad, or whatever the case may be, and she's got these nightmares, and whether those nightmares are tied to that, you know, plus the whole, like, Dylan situation. I still can't believe we ended that like that. It's like, after everything, you're going to end it like that? There's got to be something to that. Like, Dylan's going to come back or something, like, I don't know, like, that's just sucky. And there was that moment of just her with her ribbon too. She keeps Dylan's ribbon around, just kind of a reminder of her. It's kind of, because you're almost like, this episode went straight in from like, oh yeah, she was like screaming sad last episode to her not even really trying to think about it. I mean, if she focuses on it too much, it'll stop her. She needs to just kill vampires to kind of keep her mind off of things. So, but eventually I think that's all going to catch up to her, and she's just, I don't know. Like I said, like it's a great episode. I'm just so interested to see where, like, everything, you know, that I brought up kind of takes us in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Arrow. A great episode. I love, like, I love that it's not like, oh, we're just, like, Wayne. It's like, oh, this is Diggle's first episode as the Green Arrow and just filling those shoes. And it's so interesting to see, like it isn't like a perfect thing. It is him stumbling, but it's not like a, okay guys, letting everyone know, okay, this is what it's like. No, it's already an established thing and we're just getting right into it. I love the opening immediately, him jumping off the building and Dinah using her scream to push him. It was not a perfect landing, but at first I was like, oh, that's so cool. I was like, but why would he do it like that? Because Oliver never did anything like that. I was like, right, because Oliver has his arrows, which Diggle can't use for multiple reasons, because he's not good with a bow. So there's that aspect, but also the whole tremble thing, which Dinah kind of gets on him multiple times throughout the episode, but he makes it seem like he's okay. Obviously, the biggest part of this episode is about Diggle's like unsureness about himself. And he kind of brought up a lot of interesting things, because Diggle's never really had to lead the team per se, which he has to a certain degree back in season 4. He kind of did, obviously, like, after everything was said and done and Oliver and Felicity kind of left like the superhero world and Star City behind and everything, like he kind of took over the reins of everything. But this is, I guess it's a little different, because he kind of makes the comparison of like everything up till now, even his time in the army, he's always had someone else above him. So even if he made a choice, he had someone else backing him, kind of making the final choice. So now that like all that falls on him to make the final choice, and now he's unsure of his leadership, unsure of himself as the Green Arrow. It's like he has big shoes to fill, and that's Oliver's, and he doesn't want to let Oliver down, especially because it's like so much depends on this, because it's like him staying the Green Arrow gets Agent Watson to a certain degree off of Oliver's back, less scrutiny on him. Now this also gives an opportunity to spend time with his child William. So it's like, there's a lot riding on this, and it's kind of interesting because like you have two different people. You have Dinah and you have Renee kind of being worried about. Obviously, Dinah confronts him about it. It's like, you didn't act the way that you needed to this episode. The bad guys kind of got away with the nerve gas that they needed this episode, and there was a building that kind of got exploded because of the truck, because of your indecisiveness. Luckily, no one was hurt too bad, but people could get killed. People on this team could get killed. And Renee went to Oliver, but Oliver just talked to John, because for him, it's like, in his eyes, he sees John as someone that's a lot more capable, which, looking at John, he's like, I know that look on your face, that like, oh, you're beating yourself up, you're brooding. It's like, Oliver knows that better than anyone. He's like, it comes, I know it, because that's one of the things that come with being a Green Arrow, not just the hood. But saying that basically everything that happened for like with the Green Arrow is thanks to John. I mean, let's not forget, John's always been there since the very beginning, but also at the same time, it's like he kind of showed Oliver that the green Oliver, that the Green Hood could be more than what it is. Like, taking out the people on Oliver's father's list, the whole undertaking situation is like, no, like it can be a symbol of hope for people being what it is now. He helped breathe life into that persona. So he's kind of the reason why things kind of gotten to this point. Because Oliver's like, I've never been sure of anything. I've been just kind of going with my instincts. I've been driven by fear too, but the fact of the matter is, it just make it seems like I'm okay, that I'm not afraid, so. It's kind of interesting to me, because John had Oliver, and to me, I think Dinah is going to be his John, and like the one that kind of second in command of the team. It'd probably be a cross between him and Renee. It might even like a 3-way leadership, just because Renee's kind of like, wild dog. He is kind of like the, I guess, bark and bite of the team, if that makes any sense. I'm just curious. Like, if you had to ask him, I wonder who would say, like, I don't know if Dinah would necessarily say she is, but I feel like Renee would, but everyone would be like, not really, it's Dinah. And he's like, what? No. I feel like he's not as rash as he was before. I mean, he's still like, what makes Renee is the fact of the matter is he speaks his mind. If he doesn't agree with certain things, which John kind of figured as much, the whole like Renee going to Oliver thing, because it's like, I know you guys. And it's just like, and I think for him, it's like, no, it's okay, because the fact of the matter is I made a mistake and I need to, keep things going. This team can't fall apart at this time. We need to kind of, so obviously they were a little wet behind the ears this episode, because, Diggle hadn't really stepped up for leadership, but he did step up near the end of the episode, which I like that final fight between him and Onyx, how that whole situation was framed. Like it was filmed from the inside of the limo, like they were fighting on the outside and on the inside. So I also appreciate the fact is that they that whole situation with Diggle was handled like I kind of got it spoiled because of the previews and stuff, but instead of using an arrow, he now has a crossbow which fires the arrows, which is kind of an interesting look. I wonder, is that something? I feel like I vaguely remember that being part of his arsenal. I think that might be me thinking of Smallville. Because I think he used something like that in Smallville once, but I don't remember. He's always used like a bow and arrow. So, but maybe I think maybe there's different versions of Oliver, or maybe a crossbow has always been in his tool. Has he used a crossbow before in a show? I feel like I vaguely remember that. I could be mistaken though. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. I think Curtis calls it like the Green Monster, and I love that conversation at the beginning too. It's like, good job, Green Arrow. I was like, it's weird calling him Green Arrow, and even John's like, yeah, it's weird, but we kind of got to get used to it. So. But I did like that the story. The bad guys they were taking down were like ex-CIA agents who stole some gold, and basically this whole nerve gas situation was them. Like they had previously killed two people to kind of keep that secret about them stealing the gold, and this whole episode was about getting that nerve gas so they could kill the next guy that would know all the information that they had. So it kind of was weird to me the spears they were using this episode to kind of blind people. I thought they were T-spears. Turns out that's not the case. It was really interesting. No, because because there was that whole Black Siren stealing the tech from Mr. Terrific in the bunker, the whole aspect of stole the prototype T-Spears. That's what I thought that was, but Curtis never said anything about it this episode. They just found a way of dealing with the whole blinding aspect, which there's also it sends out a burst that kind of acts as I don't know what the proper word would be. It's like the way the impact from the explosion will hurt you, and ended up killing those guys at that Cord building. So also really quickly, because that whole Cord building thing made me think about the whole aspect of oh yeah, Felicity and Curtis running their building. I do appreciate one of the names that they ran. I'm sure there were others on the board, but one in particular was Oracle. To anyone that might not know DC stuff, which is I feel weird being that, but just in case you don't know, Oracle is the code name that Barbara Gordon went by when I think it's Joker shot her. I think canonically it is Joker that shot her. There was something else I was watching recently that kind of referenced that, but I think just all across the board it's him. It's around the time they were trying to they quote unquote killed off Batgirl, but it's oh no, actually she didn't die, she just got paralyzed, and after that she took on a more tech support, behind the scenes. She wasn't out as Batgirl. She was kind of similar to Felicity as Overwatch. Though I think in certain canon they've kind of pulled that back to a certain degree. They didn't retcon that. I think it's more she is back as Batgirl, I think, in certain comic book series. I don't know if that's canon to the main canon, but I mean whatever. But I vaguely remember hearing that about that. But nevertheless, I just thought that was kind of a little nice touch. I'm I love it when there's little things. I'm oh, I get that. Yes, there's something from all of my nerdiness, that I have picked up some things over the years. So I just really appreciated that little nod there. Really quickly too, the whole situation with Felicity and Oliver, I kept wondering if I was oh, you kissed on the island. It seemed like there was going to be something there, and it's oh, there are things bubbling here. And then I was but why did you not? You're a little flirty and stuff like that. And it's oh, there's something there. I'm but why aren't you acting upon it? I was it's a little weird. Are we actually kind of taking it back? Are you still seeing? It's oh no, they're doing that for William's sake. It's right, that would make sense. A little, you're just getting back in your son's life. It's going to be a little weird and awkward, especially everything that went down with Samantha, his mom, her being gone now, and you just have a lady around. Which she's taken a liking to Felicity because she's helping him out with his homework and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. And the moment that was happening, I was are they? I was oh yeah, that's almost like a stepmom situation. And it's even more so at the end of the episode where Oliver's yeah, here's a key to my place, and she's wait, what? Because basically he wanted to give William some room because it's there's a lot to process, and then his dad also dating someone. I mean, we don't know how he'll react, whether he'll be okay with it. Like I said, we do know that he looks at Felicity as oh man, she's awesome, she's super smart and everything. Which even Oliver's yeah, she is. And now it's just it's almost interesting because he even said at the end of the episode, she's are you sure? And he's I'm sure, even though he told Diggle he was never sure about anything. I think it's almost kind of comparing, just showing you just how much things are different. And the fact of the matter is I guess that shows you how sure he is. The fact is that he says it with such confidence, but maybe that's also supposed to show you the flip side of things of being oh, he said that to Diggle. Maybe that's not him being oh, I'm sure about this, that even then he has doubts, which doubt is a good thing. What was I watching recently that kind of brought that up? That were it's not a bad thing to doubt. Oh yeah, kind of crossing over to Marvel property, so Inhumans kind of, tackle that too. Was that last week? Yeah. So I don't know. It was just rattling in my brain. I knew I talked about that recently in something. Well, I say recently, but that was literally last week. But nevertheless, it is kind of interesting. It's so weird. It's something that Oliver. It seems like Oliver. It's not like the call of being Green Arrow is pulling Oliver back in. It's like, no, he's finding, giving an opportunity to be more there in William's life. It seems like William's okay with it too. It's like, oh, you sure about this? Is this kind of like, is this a more like real thing? Like Oliver hasn't really answered to the fact of the matter is that this will be a permanent thing. But at the very least for now, it seems like that's the case. But obviously balancing his duties as mayor, with being a dad, dealing with Agent Watson, who is not backing down by a long shot, because she kept pointing out the fact is that Diggle as Green Arrow didn't use any arrows at all, even though that's what Green Arrow is signature to do. But still, obviously now that he has the, like I said, I think Curtis called it the Green Monster. Now that he has that, that's definitely going to handle some, ease some of that a little bit. But she is not backing down because she brings up the fact is, well, multiple things. So at the end of the episode, we have her crime board, and basically she's labeled a lot of people, kind of showing you the fact that, and I guess that's kind of the whole aspect of showing you that she is very good at her job because she's labeled a lot of people as connections. Because I think one of the pictures she had on her board was of Laurel, and it's like she knows that Laurel was the Black Canary, so that definitely puts a shine on Oliver's like, oh, one of your friends was, one of the vigilantes that works with the Green Arrow, and you have a direct line to the Green Arrow and his team. So it's like a lot of that stuff. She's definitely not backing down. She is going like, who are you protecting? So I think it's a situation of her being like, oh, she might be looking at it a little differently. Like, oh, like maybe she's looking at it as like, maybe you're not the Green Arrow, but you know who the Green Arrow is and you're trying to protect them. Or maybe she's looking at it as like, are all these people involved? Like, like I said, I'm curious to see what her role is this season. Is it just to cause problems in that regard, or is it like I said, is there some greater like person on top of all of this? Like, was she sent here by someone unknowing that she's part of some big plan to put pressure on Oliver, or is it just like, no, she's just a good, like I brought this up last episode, is she just a good FBI agent doing her job? We still have no idea, and I'm very interested to find out. But the thing I was going to bring up is the fact of the matter, and it's something that Oliver has to deal with this episode as mayor, is the whole aspect of like, he's very kind of seen in the position of like being okay with the way vigilantes handle things, especially because basically the fact is that Oliver is so okay with the vigilantes doing their own thing. It kind of undermines the I was literally about to call them the GCPD, the SCPD. It takes me a little while to kind of think about the initials for that, but that is something that's so interesting that it pops up in certain stories, because it's like Green Arrow has to suffer that because of it's kind of always the stigma, because it's like, because that's something definitely like Batman has to deal with to a certain degree, arguably Superman, I'm sure, like Flash has to a certain degree, but I feel like the scrutiny is very different, because it's like, oh no, the Flash is here, these are metahumans, and it's like, not, I mean, the CCPD, I had to stop to think about it too, are more equipped to deal with metahumans, but then again, it's like a different scale of it. These are regular criminals that the Green Arrow is going up against that the cops can handle. But it's like saying like, oh, the fact that you've got vigilantes makes it seem like the cops can't do their own job. So there's a little animosity there, because it paints the police in a very bad light to the public. What you have Lance doing his best to cover all bases, but this whole situation gives more ammunition to people who want to kind of make a more anti-vigilante bill. Like the whole situation, it's just funny because it's like it shows you the difference between vigilante and superhero. Because that was something that came up, was it last season? Because that whole conversation, like Kara brought it up about Jimmy putting on the mask and becoming Guardian, which is kind of interesting. I didn't even think about that at all, that he's yet to like don his suit this season. He's just been Jimmy most of the season so far. I'm curious to nevertheless, that was just kind of something I didn't even think about. I guess I'll save that for Supergirl. But nevertheless, it's like just showing you the difference of how heroes are treated versus vigilantes. It's like, if you have superpowers and you're saving the day, you're a hero, but you doing it without powers, you're vigilant. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting, like thing on it, when you break it down and think about it like that. So It does seem like it is kind of interesting that I ended up bringing this up. I ended up was it like last episode or the episode before last? I brought up the whole conversation of like, well, the fact of the matter is the city backs Oliver in what he does, doesn't they? Don't they? Because of the fact of the matter is how they joined behind him and against Damien Dark at the end of season 4. And so season 4's finale, they like fought alongside Green Arrow to kind of take back the city. And I was like, huh. So I was like, yeah, people had their own, because it was like the whole thing of treating Green Arrow like a criminal. Obviously, he's running with the police last season because of the whole Billy situation. But then I was like, oh, yo, the city seems like they're more positive about Green Arrow. We still haven't 100% seen where they stand now, but it seems like we're definitely going to be seeing it going forward because basically the whole bill that's about to be passed, it's like majority of people are going to be on like this congresswoman's or councilwoman's side about like, you know, being anti-vigilante. But Oliver's put in a position to be like, hey, now we take it to the public to decide. They will be the ultimate ones to finally decide whether or not, you know, should we be for vigilantes or against them, which definitely I'm sure stuff in the future is going to play a role in whether that ultimately gets decided or not, you know? It's just kind of interesting. I brought that up before. Now it does play a big role in the season, and I guess I should have expected it. I wonder, will Agent Watson kind of have any role in like tilting the scales to be more anti-vigilante and stuff like that? Once again, like so far, like I said, there's still the whole aspect of her just being a cop doing her job, and the whole vigilante angle of things is like, you as a viewer, you're like, shut up, let them do their job, they're superheroes. But sometimes it's like you get it too, because it's like you're kind of taking the law in your own hands and stuff like that. I mean, it's something you can understand, but it's like like I said, there's the other side of you. It's like, shut up, it's Green Arrow, let him do his job. It's him and his team of superheroes. They saved the day. They've literally saved the city multiple times, you know. So it's like after like Ninja Assassins, The Undertaking, you know, the siege on the city with Slade and everything. Which the fact of the matter is, now that Oliver and Slade are on good terms, because I remember seeing that in the trailers, that's definitely not going to look good for Oliver going forward too. Because like people do know who Slade is. Because I brought that up before. I was like, I couldn't remember if people had ever knew Slade as, you know, well, as Deathstroke. I didn't know for sure, but nevertheless, that's definitely going to be something interesting, because I do know, you know, from the, like, I remember from the trailer, he's definitely going to be popping up more in the season. I mean, at the same time, the actor Manu Bennett is also doing Shannara Chronicles, so I'm sure that whole production schedule situation was like a factor in all of that too. So, but nevertheless, I'm very interested to see where that goes down, because, you know, even Lance is kind of worried about it, because, like, you know, Renee's like, what's going on? He's like, a stay of execution. So even he's not 100% sure things are going to necessarily float in their way, because maybe at the end of the day, the council still has, like, the councilwoman and everyone else still has the final vote, but maybe the public's opinion will sway their own. Or maybe it will ultimately, being in this position, because it's kind of a Hail Mary, will ultimately come down to like, oh, the public has to 100% decide like where we fall in this whole situation. So very interested to see how that all plays out. Two more things. One, I am still curious about the whole Felicity and Curtis situation. The fact is they're building up this business and then it's kind of a subplot. Makes me wonder about that. Like, I feel like that's going to turn into something and I'm just not sure what. We still also have that whole aspect of like, we still don't know who like exposed Oliver last episode with those doctored photos. So there's that. Then we also found out that Diggle is on like taking drugs to kind of deal with his old tremor, because it's like, oh, it's going away. It's like, yeah, it's going away for now, but obviously it's going to come back. It's like, oh, the reason why it's dealt with is because, you know, you're taking these drugs. Because even she was like, whoa, is there any like aim assist with those things? It's like, no, all that aim is John. I was like, huh. I was like, maybe his tremor thing doesn't affect that. I was like, but why would that affect a crossbow when the fact of the matter is he has trouble squeezing the trigger on a gun? I was like, okay, so now the question is, like, is that something John's doing on his own? Did he go to Lila about it? Does Lila even know about the fact of the matter is that he's got, like, that whole tremor situation going on? Did he use some of her connection at Argus to set this up? Did she set it up for him? I'm curious. Because you can definitely tell that's definitely going to go down a bad route. Because, Diggle still hasn't told Oliver the truth about that whole situation, which, you know, now Dinah's going to back away because she thinks like, oh, no, it's all good. I don't have to worry about him anymore. So ultimately, we'll see where that all goes. Like I said, a great episode. I'm so interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.